Well, you turn on the news and you've probably heard about the Listeria Scare affecting Delmarva. Well, it's growing.
Ruse Foods of Kenton has extended their voluntary recall to include sour cream products under the name Crema Pura Mexicana Cultured Sour Cream, saying through the Delaware Division of Health and Social Services that customers and food outlets should destroy these products immediately.
The sour cream is in addition to the soft cheeses that were recalled. 16 varieties of cheese made here on Delmarva were recalled after some of the cheeses were linked to one death and 8 illnesses.
The Centers for Disease Control says 3 babies were among those infected. The cheeses are made by Ruse Foods. This is their food factory in Kenton, Delaware. According to the Delaware Health Department, the company has volunteered to help with the investigation. The recalled products are the company's Mexicana, Amigo, Santa Rosa de Lima, and Anita brands. The CDC says the products were distributed in Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, New York, New Jersey, and the District of Columbia, but the one death was reported in California.
The other illnesses were in Maryland, but none in Delaware. Now, the extent of the recall is still being investigated, and as you just heard, Listeria is a serious infection that can cause illness, even death.
So the question now is, how can we protect ourselves and our family? Well, here to tell us more is Jamie Mag. Jamie's the Director of Community Environmental Health Services with the Delaware Division of Public Health. Jamie, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it very much. I'm going to just cut straight to the chase here. What is Listeria?
Listeria is a bacteria that causes an infection called listeriosis. And primarily that infection is gotten into the body through the consumption of contaminated food. We've seen it in the past with melons such as cantaloupes. We're seeing it now with the soft cheeses from Ruse. But it can also be associated with raw meats and produce, processed meats, smoked seafood, and things like unpasteurized milk and cheese.
So it's just like a food poisoning, basically.
It's similar, yeah.
Yeah. So we heard that some of the ill were newborns. And now, are they particularly at risk for this Listeria?
Anytime we talk about diseases or illnesses, there's certain segments of the population that we're more concerned about. The very young, the very old, pregnant women, anyone with a compromised immune system, meaning that they're just not as able to fight off infection as a healthy person might be.
Right.
So obviously in a case like this, we're very concerned about newborns and the pregnant women and some of those other populations.
Okay, so I'm not feeling so good. Are there any symptoms I should be looking for to?
The primary symptoms, it would probably start with a gastrointestinal problem like diarrhea or upset stomach, would move on to fever, muscle ache, things like that.
Diarrhea, headaches. Wow. Loss of balance, confusion, stiff neck. Wow. Okay, so how common is Listeria? Do you see this a lot?
We don't see it a lot. We don't consider it very common. Nationwide last year there were about 1,600 illnesses and about 260 deaths, which sound like high numbers, but when you start to compare them to things like flu and more common illnesses, they really it is a fairly uncommon illness.
Okay, so I don't want to get sick. How can I avoid it? What can I do to prevent getting sick?
There's some very basic things that everybody does every day that we can use to prevent that. The first being to pay attention to the recalls, and if you have any of those products, to destroy them, return them to the store. Pay attention in case the recall expands further to different brands, different products. Once we get into the home, there's basic preventative steps that we can take. If we're using raw produce, we want to wash it very well before we use it, even if it's going to be cooked or peeled or anything like that.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're not taking any contamination or any of the bacteria from that raw produce and getting it onto our hands, getting it onto other parts of the kitchen where it's going to move to things that we're going to consume.
Okay, yeah.
We want to make sure that raw meats are stored properly. We want to make sure that if they're in the fridge, they're at 40 or below. If they're in the freezer, they're at 0 or below. We also want to make sure that we're not using the same utensils, using the same cutting boards, or creating any cross-contamination between a raw meat and something that's going to be consumed, or our hands or other surfaces. Want to wash your hands well and often, and really it's just about the basic kitchen sanitation, basically just keeping a clean kitchen and making sure you take a lot of these basic steps.
Well, what about choosing safer foods? I mean, like raw milk and raw cheeses, things like that.
That's definitely something to consider. As we said, we want to make sure that if you have any products on the recall, particularly, that you want to return those to the store or destroy those. As far as Delaware goes, raw milk right now is not allowed in Delaware, so that's not something that we deal a lot with.
Okay, so in this particular case, we're talking about cheeses, soft cheeses. We're talking about sour cream. Is there anything we can do with that?
To prevent?
Really, the best thing you can do is pay attention to the recalls,
Yeah.
and not just this recall, but the FDA monitors food outbreaks and situations throughout the country. So there's a revolving list of recalls and notices and things like that, and really just become that educated consumer, and that's one of the best things you can do.
Best way to go.
We try to do that here on Delmarva Life, let everyone know.
Right.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank
Jamie.
you. Great having you.
And if you would like to learn more about Listeria and how to protect you and your family, go to our website, delmarvalife.com, and click on the show tab.
Here's a question for you. Would you be willing to give up your smartphone?
I need my phone, I need the internet, I need to connect to my world.
Well, you don't have to give up your smartphone, but there may be something even more important to you that you are giving up. We're going to take a look at how to make sure that is not happening.
And you certainly don't want to give information about yourself to the wrong person, but who can you trust these days? Well, you may want to consider doing background checks. We show you how and with whom to start.
But first, Dr. Oz tells us why now's the perfect time to throw out the old and bring in the new.
Hi, I'm Dr. Oz. Spring is the perfect time to purge your pantry and restock it with healthful foods that can make you feel great and can help shrink your waistline in time for summer. Start by dumping products that contain simple sugars, including those with high fructose corn syrup. These are not just high in calories, but they're empty in nutrition. Satisfy your sweet tooth by keeping a little agave, honey, or maple sugar handy. Next, replace the saturated and trans fat products with heart-healthy olive oil and avoid products with white flour. Also, try some 100% whole grain breads and pastas, which fill you up faster and make you feel fuller. Store spices in a cool place away from the oven and throw out the old condiment and spices that have expired or lost their potency.